Good afternoon. 4 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting of the Kerrville EIC to order. Do we have any volunteers for an invocation?
No.
Danny, thank you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings that you bestowed on us in the beautiful city of Kerrville where we live. We ask for your continued guidance as we seek to spend the people's money fairly. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I know we've got one speaker signed up to talk on the item 5B on the agenda. Do we have anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the EIC minutes from January 9th, 2023?
So moved.
The motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, raise your hand. Those are approved. Okay, our next report is KDC. Mr. Salinas? And Ms. Jordan, sorry.
Well, I see a monitor here, but I guess it's not.
It's not working.
Okay, all right.
Today. Gotta go back to the old way. I know.
All right.
I know.
That's why
I'm not excited.
brought my notes. No, it's good. It's good. So. Yeah, I'm resisting having to use them, but all right. Mr. Chair, members of the board. So today we're going to be presenting the Economic Development Strategic Plan and its final recommendations as it pertains to the talent pipeline. And for a lot of you all who were involved in the stakeholder retreat and some of the interviews thereafter, this is actually a direct result of that. Okay, so I'm going to start with the State of the City address. Last month, so it was mentioned how there's construction everywhere in Kerrville, and how the 2050 plan is a major driver behind that. The mayor had said, really like how the mayor said, look, this is a plan that's not sitting on a shelf. And then the city manager followed up by saying that, look, it's not a coincidence that we're seeing all of this activity in the community. And for us at the KDC, we also like to say that, we're part of that reason why there's activity here in the community as well. That being said, so as far as the plan itself, identified some areas as far as what the region is experiencing with challenges and some changes. That's housing, childcare, skills alignment, which is the ability for communities to recruit the talent to a specific area. And then also the change in environment and specific, going back to COVID, how that's kind of like uprooted a lot of, our lives and what we do now today. So as far as the actual plan of action, it's got 4 focus areas. That is marketing, anchor institutions, the existing workforce, and then being a community convener. So we'll touch on each one of those here. First one is on the marketing and branding. So that is basically developing a multi-year plan. In this case, a 3-year plan, because that's our service agreement with the EIC. And looking at how to recruit the talent to our area. Marketing, one of the strategies is marketing to community workers, as well as marketing to graduates of Schreiner University who have come here to study and then have left. And then also leveraging some of our local events to continue to promote this area as a place to do business and for people to live in as well. And that helps us in the area of recruiting talent. So the consultants, that's Tip Strategies out of Austin, a highly recognized firm nationally. They gave us this case study, which is Make It Tampa Bay. It's Tampa Hillsborough EDC. And they created a campaign very specific to millennial job seekers and millennial business owners. And especially those that travel to the area, to the university. I don't know if it's Central, probably not Central, I think it's University of Southern Florida. Traveled, were there in school and then have left. So now they're in the process of trying to recruit some of those, especially those that already have families and have started businesses and what have you, bring them back to the area. So that's something that fits us to a T with Schreiner University. And then using social media again to track some of these millennial young families and help us with our workforce initiatives. The second one is anchor institutions. Meeting up with our major employers and addressing some of these challenges and looking at a very specific target, sector specific as far as talent initiatives. And that would be aerospace, which is something that we're working on already. Cybersecurity is another one that popped up. And then technical skills, high-tech skills, as it pertains to advanced manufacturing, and then hosting forums and what have you, where some of these companies and institutions can have a voice, and there's an alignment as far as the messaging. The case study that they provided, which is one that I like a lot, is the Pflugerville Manufacturing Academy. And that's creating awareness for additive manufacturing, partnering with education as well as industry, and created very targeted curriculums in partnership again with industry as it pertains, or as far as what they're looking for and what they need, and in turn ensuring that there's a pipeline of talent and workforce for local companies. The third one is existing workforce, and that's identifying a sector of the population that is unemployed or underemployed. And we do this with some nonprofit organizations, trying to see who else is out there, because our unemployment rate, which is usually in the 3+ range, which is one of the lowest in the state of Texas, that means that we don't have a lot of, I think in Kerrville, we've got about 600+ people that are not working. So how many of those can actually work or are underemployed? Try to bring them, lure them back into the workforce. And we do that again with some of the nonprofits, and then working with schools as far as internships and apprenticeships. That's something that we've already started working on, as far as meeting with some companies and floating the idea of an apprenticeship, and there would be funds tied to it through the governor's office. A case study that they provided was the Pathways to Work, which is out of the Dallas metro area. And this is a initiative where it's about workers that are in demand. So your employers will identify those, and then the power of convening, bringing them together as far as funders, the employers, and some of those agencies, and helping focus on now what high school students are going to college, and the ones that are not going to college, what can we do with them as far as developing that middle skill set, which could be a few months training to 2 years for a certification, because that's what the majority of companies are looking for. They're looking for that middle skill set. So that's what this case study provides, and that's what this particular strategy is giving us as well. And then the last one is our community convener, and that is all. I like to say that the true power of an economic development organization is not so much about, recruiting projects or funding projects. It's more about the power of convening. And we're actually doing this week. We've got a major project coming in, and we have to convene. We have to bring in different stakeholders. It's almost like managing a baseball game, right? It's like what players are going to be in and out, who's pitching, so on and so forth. So we're doing that, and that's the true power of an economic development organization. Can you bring the people to the table when you need them for a specific task, initiative, and in this case, the recruitment of a company? So that's what this is. And again, working with our employers to elevate their concerns and make sure that that messaging is in alignment as far as the attraction of talent and retention of talent as well. So a case study that they provided us was actually our very own, because the stakeholder retreat, which was in the summer, and then there was interviews after that, we started getting some very preliminary information out of that, and we heard it loud and clear. I mean, it was our stakeholders said we need the KDC to start working on child care, because that's what the employers are looking for. That's what they need. That's one of our community challenges. So Katie's going to further flush that topic out as far as what she's done so far and some of the findings. And again, that's one of the case studies as far as working to have a collaborative solution to that particular challenge. And we've already had several trips to the state capitol, meeting with the governor's office, trying to find funding for that particular initiative. And I think we're going to be successful in that, but there's still some more work to be done in that regard. Okay, so wrapping up my part before Katie comes up, this is where I like to say the rubber meets the pavement. The consultants that come back and say nothing new to us, that our population growth has slowed, specifically for our civilian workforce. That's the one that's actually decreased. But our job creation continues to grow. And something that really made me take a step back was our labor shed actually grew, and it grew pretty extensive in the last few years. So what that means is we've got more people driving in from San Antonio than ever before. We've got people driving in from as far away as San Marcos and New Braunfels, which I've done that drive. It's not an easy drive, but you know they're coming in for some of the good paying jobs in our community. And on the flip side, the majority that people work in Kerrville do not work in Kerrville. So what that means is well, we have leakage as far as good paying wages and what have you. So here, as you can see in the graph and the numbers, we've got about 10,000 people now, and that's up from about 7,000 people a few years ago. We got about almost 10,000 people that are driving in from outside of Kerr County for a job in Kerr County. And then we've got about 5,000, a little over 5,000 people from Kerr County that are driving outside of the county for a job. And then the number that has shrunk is the people that actually, I think it's at 4,100, the people that actually live in Kerrville and work in Kerrville. So as you can see, these numbers are, I would not say concerning, but gives us something to work with. And ultimately what we want is, we want all of those wages to stay in the community. I'll give you an example. Killdeer, great example of a company that was recruited and supported by this board, this entity. In the last year and a half that they've been in operation, they've already put almost $4 million just in wages, $4 million just in wages into the community. And about 90% of those wages are for people in Kerrville. And that's because we've been working with them, hand in glove to making sure that they hire from the area. What this plan says is what you did for Killdeer now, you have to do for your local companies as well, to ensure that that money stays in the community.
Bill, back up a slide. Am I reading this right then? If we have 9,300 people commuting to work and 4,200 people that live here and work, that we only have less than 15,000 people working in the community?
Jobs.
Is that a fair read? Because you couldn't, those are the only two choices, right? You either live here and work here, or you work here and live someplace else.
Well, you live here and work here, and then the other one is you drive in from out of town, and then you leave the community. Let me do the math on that one.
So this one
Let me
is
check.
including those who live here and work here.
No, that's the right column.
Yeah.
And work.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the.
I'm just thinking that that surprises me is that our labor force is effectively 15,000 people.
Trying to go through my labor shed numbers, but that sounds about right.
Yeah.
For a community our size, that's about right. It's a little closer to 20, I believe. Yes, sir?
This says live and work in Kerrville, so if somebody lives in Ingram and works in Kerrville, does that count as being outside the area?
No, it's
or is it
actually
Kerr County?
Kerr County.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Kerr County. Yeah.
I have a different question. If back to the partnership with the schools, and then also bringing in the childcare component that's expanding the view of KDC, and working with the schools to develop programs. Not sure, this was an informal conversation I had recently where we were talking about, I have a son that's about to go into high school, and we were talking about the elective courses and tracks. And it was brought up that it sounded like potentially the child care development track would be going away. And that at this time, those who are on that track actually have a certification when they graduate to be child care providers. So I didn't know what conversations as far as those course trackings, if y'all are aware, or if this is something that is, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm not
anything to
too
add
sure
to
about that one. Katie might be able to address that one. But I do know that, the school districts, I shouldn't say childcare is not a fun job, but it's kind of been a hot potato And it's not just here, it's in all the communities that we've been looking at.
Well, it just
And-
seems like if someone's not planning to go to college, I understand that childcare is not the best paying position to start in a lot of cases for someone, but I would just be concerned if that's something that's big on our radar, if we're taking away opportunities to have that kind of trained workforce to help with childcare by removing programming that would allow them to have a certification to go directly into that, into that job skill after they graduate from high school.
All right, hold on, let me get through one slide, and then we'll have her touch on that one. What I have, as far as childcare, Katie did a fantastic job as far as meeting with every childcare, just about every childcare entity out there, at the very least reaching out to each one of them, as well as the school districts, and the governor's office. So there's been a lot of work put into
Right.
that. And I'll get back to you as far as those numbers, but it's our civilian workforce. It's not 20,000. It's somewhere between 15 and 20,000. We have a lot of leakage. Along those lines, so as you can see here in the map, this is something that we did not have 4 or 5 years ago. Our labor shed used to be 4, maybe 5 counties. Now it's closer to 10 to 12 counties. And as you can see, like half of San Antonio, except for southern San Antonio and east San Antonio, I mean, everything else, I mean, there's a lot of people driving in for some of the good paying jobs here. So what that means is for some of our local companies is, there is, because we'll hear companies, well, we can't hire. Well, the numbers now show that you can. You might have to pay a little bit more, but you can hire if you extend your labor shed and you let us work with you. Now, that being said, it's not good for us because again, we're promoting for people to come in and take these jobs. Good for the local companies, but not good for the economy as far as the leakage of those wages. Hence, that's where this plan comes in, coming in to help us with work on the retention of talent, recruitment of talent to the area. That's where quality of life comes into place because that helps us in the recruitment and retention of talent. And then when we are recruiting companies that they're very target specific, specifically in the aerospace, additive manufacturing, and advanced manufacturing, because those are typically less jobs, higher capital investment, and those are the jobs that millennials are looking for at this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie, and then we'll be available for.
Could you go back, just, that slide, I'm a little confused about these numbers on the right over here, in the light blue. We're saying 3,477, people live outside the city limits of Kerrville but work in Kerrville. 3,477, is that what that says?
I believe so. I can't see it in my notes over there, but that should be right.
Then to the right of that, it's got 792, that's coming from San Antonio. And then these other 2 columns that are other, is that other than San Antonio, but somewhere else in Texas, or, I mean, I don't.
That should be within the 10 to 12 county,
If you look on the report that.
county area.
Danny, if you look on the report that was emailed to you, it breaks those down a little bit better. The 792 is San Antonio, the 293 is other locations in Bandera County, 268 is Gillespie County, 226 is Austin, 225 is Ingram. So it's broken down in more detail, with those, because those boxes weren't big enough to include those. On his slide, the boxes aren't big enough, but if you look in the packet, it's broken down by the different regions.
Okay.
Yeah, and the general theme there is that the people coming in from out of town to work in Kerr County has increased. That's what we've noticed. I'll turn it over to Katie and, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Is my volume okay? Okay. So quickly, I would like to share with you the Child Care Working Group timeline so we can get a reminder of where we've been and where we are aiming to go. We started this project when I joined the KEDC in October. The group was formed in November. We had our first meeting in December. We also, our childcare working group meeting, we also met with the Texas Workforce Commission, Alamo, for a town hall at the Chamber of Commerce that included local care center directors. I made a visit to the Capitol to visit specifically with Commissioner Aaron Demerson, who is coming here in the month of March to talk specifically with our employers about child care projects. We did have a meeting with the child care center directors here at City Hall in January. We also had our second of 3 working group meetings in January, as well as another Austin, Texas visit. Recently, I have been working on speaking with some of the child care center directors one-on-one to get a better understanding of their challenges and their appetites for expansion and what we can do to specifically support those projects. And just last Friday, we had our 3rd working group meeting in order to summarize the challenges that we found in 90 days and provide some recommendations to the community going forward. And so I'll be talking about those in the next slides. The next steps you can kind of see highlighted in green. We're making the recommendations now. There will be another Austin, Texas visit in order to, get the folks plugged into where they need to go in order to leverage some of those funding tools that hopefully will be available to our community. And we are going to apply for some projects, and the programs are slated to end this fall. So that's kind of where we're at on the timeline and where we've been. During the last 90 days, we have identified 5 possible expansions in our community. Specifically, the Kroc Center and KISD have emerged as being poised to leverage some programs quickly. And last time I presented, I believe we only had 3 possible startups, but now we've identified 4 possible startups in our community that we are working with to get them the resources that they need in order to be able to serve our community. And our ultimate goal would be to strengthen the workforce by 100 jobs. By allowing these children to be served, we hope that it will allow their parents to be able to return to work or resume full-time work. So the summary of our findings in the last 90 days include a vague statement. The challenge is complex and is affected by a variety of other community factors. And I think that this is probably something that all of us knew going in, and we have discovered that there is some additional information required for us to make, the next steps on our recommendations. But we have defined several specific challenges as well as a variety of creative tools that we believe could be used to alleviate this community challenge. And some of those creative tools include a shared services alliance, partnering with established providers who are poised for expansion, further developing apprenticeship programs, and a child care business incubator. So these are all creative strategies that we are researching, and hopefully we'll have opportunities to deploy in the community. While we do recognize that there's merit in all the solutions that we have identified over the past 90 days, we also recognize that these ideas must be supported by the greater community at the grassroots level. So we recognize that there's still some missing information, including specific data points and some projected return on investment for the solutions that we've identified in order to attract prospective funding partners and execute with greater precision. So here are the 2 strategies that our working group is recommending that our community experiment with first. We are having a follow-up meeting with the Chamber of Commerce to create a child care alliance. This alliance will be formed in order to connect with and serve local child care centers with strategic networking functions, give them access to additional community resources, and increased exposure in the community to better connect them with the families that they serve. The alliance ideally would elect or nominate some leadership or a board that would work with the employers to poll the employees on their child care needs so we can get some more specific data points in an effort to gain clarity on what our community specifically needs. The other recommendation that we're making for the community to experiment with first is the KEDC would like to support KISD and the Kroc Center in their expansion plans over the next 90 days in order to maximize resources available at the state level. Through our research, we have recognized that these two entities are currently developing strategic plans on this initiative, so they are a little bit ahead of their peers in their ability to execute quickly and serve some needs in our community quickly. So that's one of the reasons that that became a specific recommendation at this time. So our next steps will be to meet with the Chamber of Commerce and hand off the project to discuss what this community shared alliance would look like, and loop in some of our care center directors in order to gain their engagement in rolling out this effort. I'll also be working with the KISD and the Kroc Center one-on-one over the next 90 days to make sure that they're plugged into the resources that they need in order to be able to execute on the strategies that they are working on at the moment. And we plan to pivot as new information emerges. And to answer your question, Kim, we have looked into apprenticeship programs and strengthening the apprenticeship programs, especially in the early childhood education area. As a matter of fact, we've invited Daisy Holmes with the Texas Workforce Commission, who is the head of all things apprenticeship at the state level, to Kerrville, and she's accepted our invitation and will be here in March. And so I'm working on creating a luncheon to invite some key stakeholders in the private sector, as well as the education sector and some corresponding sectors in order to be able to find out what we can do to breathe some life into some of those programs. And I suspect that you might be speaking about the KISD specifically, and I hesitate to speak on their behalf, so forgive me for being vague. But I have heard anecdotally that there has been a lack of interest in those early childhood education programs at the KISD, so they are reevaluating that in terms of the resources that they have in order to move forward. I can also say that Alamo Technical Colleges still has some really amazing programs that are available to the students in our community, as well as the Ingram Independent School District. So there are other opportunities in our community, and we look forward to coming alongside these entities and supporting them in what direction they think is best for their organization.
Sure.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. And yeah, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. John had some things he wanted to share.
Greg, if I may, I have the pleasure of representing the EIC on the KEDC board, and I just wanted to share with all of you that I find this plan that they put together sturdy and impressive. It's from my experience, it's very creative. All of the goals are in alignment with the K 2050 plan, nicely aligned. Their program attack is asymmetric, and that's a big change for economic development, which historically has been fairly simplistic. Like you go out and you market or advertise and you try to bring people in, and that's what it's about. This is a far more creative, complex program, and I'm very impressed with it. They're dealing with as you can see, I think they're dealing with the contemporary needs of our community and area, and they're doing it very effectively. And I think that, as you know, it's a strong board, and I think Gil is giving strong leadership to the program, and I think his years of experience, he brings with him essentially a regional and a national relationship package that only comes with years and years of being in the business. And the net effect is he's got a whole bunch of force multipliers out there that are helping him and Katie get done what we want done. And I hope you would take some comfort in where they are. I'm very impressed with it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the project status update, which was included in your packet. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? I know we have one speaker, but any preliminary questions on any of the project status updates?
I think maybe, not to speak for KCLC, but they're probably speaking, they probably want to speak on item 6B, which is the consideration of, you know, the project status update for Tranquility Island, if that is, if
Yeah, we
that's who the
can,
speakers
we'll,
are.
we'll get to that when,
Yeah.
when we tackle that, agenda item.
No updates from us. We got pad poured for the fitness court. It's gonna cure for the next 28 days or so as of last Friday. And, you heard from the Tranquility Island project, last time we were here on phase 1.
Okay.
And, everything else is pretty much as it was, ongoing.
All right, then we'll move on to the monthly financial report.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
Hello?
Before we jump into the January financials, we just wanted to give you a little information on the things we look at and monitor regularly, and just some of our findings. So Julie showed some of this stuff to council last meeting. So these are U.S. inflation graphs. The one up on the left is a look at the past year. So in January of 22, we had an inflation rate of 7.5%, and by the summer, beginning of the summer, we were up to 9.1% there. And you can see how it's trending down over here towards the end of the calendar year. So most of that's because the feds are making their moves. Over to the right, you have just a list of the Fed meetings this past year. They've raised rates 4.5% over the last 12 months. So obviously when demand is high and supply is low, they're going to do what they need to do to level that out. That bottom chart on the right is a look at inflation for the past 5 years, and even though we are better than January and it is leveling out, we're definitely still higher from the last 5 years inflation. So that's just a quick overview of what we've been looking at and what we always take into consideration. So this here is another inflation chart. This is the 85-year look though, and back in the 30s, obviously, we went through the Great Depression there. But moving forward to 1980, we peaked at an inflation rate of 15%, and that did cause about a 16-month recession. So at that time, employment was fairly high. Unemployment was fairly high, and just a very strained economy that we were going through. So right now, our current inflation rates, they are obviously affecting our sales tax, and that's something we look at very closely every month for y'all. So we're seeing a reduction in the volume of commodities and just household good items that are being sold in the stores. Everything is costing more to buy, so folks are buying less. You know, sales tax comes in 2 months after the sell date, so October, that gold dot up there on the left, fiscal year 23 starting, we had a future period payment for November that came in, so that shows the large spread in that gap from that purple dot up to the gold one. That was last October, and then that was the cause of the little increase in November. December, if you keep going, there was no out-of-period payments, and then January, where we're at now, includes a $59,000 future payment. So if you take that out, we're pretty close to flat, and you know, it's just starting to level out there. So month over month, we're just seeing the compression going on there. Right now, we're at a rolling 12-month average of 8.8% increase over last year in sales tax. So we're just pretty much watching everything and trying to see how everything plays out. We do have some big events coming up for recreation, may bring some business in town and things of that nature. So we're not making any quick moves right now, but just monitoring very closely. Alrighty, on to actual activity for January. So looking at your current period and your year-to-date actuals to the right, sales tax for January, which were November sales, brought in $436,000. This is a 3.4% increase over January of 22. Year-to-date collected is $1,666,000, and we estimated you to be right there, about 1.6. So we're treading pretty closely. We have received February sales tax, and it's $490,000, and that's just another 3% increase. So our budget for this year was a 6% increase over fiscal year 22, so just watching it. Your next revenue down is your interest income, January earned $24,800, 16 in your pool, and 7,900 in your short-term investments. And that gives you interest revenue year-to-date of $83,000. Down into the expenditures, you have your monthly administrative services fee, a quarterly payment to KEDC, monthly debt transfers, and we did go ahead and move $125,000 over to the Downtown River Trail project. So for the month of January, you netted a surplus of $151,000, and year-to-date, $959,000. Okay, on to cash flow. So for the end of January, your cash balance is $4.5 million. Your second column there to the right is just the remaining of quarter two. The estimations, just to note, in March, you do have maturity on one of your investments coming up at $1 million. So we're looking to reinvest those while the rates are still pretty good. And we'll look into those probably this week or so to see what we're going to replace it with. And then down to the projects, we might start seeing that activity roll in here pretty soon. And your last slide here is your financial analysis. So top chart is your cash and investments. Your tax pool account was earning 4.52% this month, and then your short-term investments are around 5%. Your sales tax analysis is in the middle there, comparisons throughout the year, and then the bottom chart is your project balances. And that's all the information we have.
Okay, any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6A is to consider an amendment to the Economic Development Grant Agreement between KEDC and EIC.
So not to make them come back up and redo that entire presentation, that essentially was the 3-year plan right there. So that would just be included into the 3-year agreement as a part of Exhibit B, and we'd move on. You all asked us to bring that back as a part of signing the agreement with KEDC and the EIC, and so we would just include that in there, and that would be it.
And this may be just part of what we would anticipate otherwise, but, you know, with some of these projects, Gil and Katie, can y'all follow up with this as they kind of come to maturity and kind of give us an update on what the deliverables end up being?
As far as what we mentioned today?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do that usually on an annual basis, like an end-of-year report. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm interested with, 100 positions that might need to be created for childcare. I'd be interested to see how that measures out and what these efforts will yield.
Okay, most definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6B is consideration of possible action on an update on the Phase 1 completion and remaining budget balance of the Tranquility Island lighting project and possible next steps for Phase 2.
So, last few meetings, we've had folks come in from KCLC, the Kerrville Christmas Lighting Corporation, to talk about, to thank the board and to talk about kind of project status. And so you've seen those presentations. The original iterations of this was an ask from EIC for matching funds of up to $100,000, and that KCLC would go out and get the other 100, not knowing exactly how much the whole project would end up costing. The city took a look at that, and it was broken up into 2 phases. And the first phase was funded, constructed, and completed to the tune of $155,000. And there currently exists a budget balance of $45,000 in EIC's fund account, and KCLC has a balance in their account of $5,000. And so engineering went and asked the design engineers to give an estimate on the Phase 2 portion of it. And this was at the tail end of the week, and that came in over the weekend, and we got an estimate of $260,000 for Phase 2, which would go from Francisco Limos and connect back to where the project stops. So in the agreement, we talk about lighting up 105 trees. The first phase of the project was able to get to about half of that. So we have two of the members of the board, one you may recognize, one you may not, who are here to talk to you about kind of their prospects, and I believe an ask might be coming as well. So I was going to turn it over to them and just kind of let them talk through their visioning and what they see for phase two, and then I want to bring it back to the board for any discussion and next steps for staff.
Thank you.
Good
Charlie,
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh,
come up
okay.
here. I don't want my board members getting a crook in their neck.
Thank you. I am Charlie McElvain. George Eichner is our chair, and he is out of town this afternoon on a family activity, so we're stepping up this afternoon to take his place. As Michael mentioned, this was a program that started in the late 2018 and 19. We went through a matching grants project with the city during 2021, raised the funds for the first portion of the project, and got not quite halfway down the Tranquility Island. And so this second request would be for the $211,000 approximately needed to complete the project on down to Francisco Lemus Bridge, which will complete the lighting project for Tranquility Island. The Christmas Light Committee name may be a little bit of a misnomer, because these lights could be used for other projects too, and hopefully once it's completed with LED lights and controlling the colors, we could use it for Valentine's Day, we could use it for Thanksgiving, any number of other events to light the island. Our first contractor did a fantastic job of placing the infrastructure, and that they were very cautious of not damaging any of the trees. They worked around the root system, and Puchek Engineering is the company that would be installing this second phase, and they have agreed to be as diligent as the first organization. Happy to answer questions you may have at this point.
I think for me, the obvious question is, so the first phase for half the project, which included engineering and getting the electrical over there and everything, was 150,000, give or take. And the second half is gonna be 260,000.
Yes, sir.
What's the differential there? I mean, why is the second phase so much more expensive?
Part of it probably is the economy itself, but, and I said halfway, I don't guess we went quite halfway, 105 trees initially, and so we still have over half that event to half the distance to cover to complete the infrastructure into Francisco Lemus, or into the bridge there.
Gary, there was the design engineer broke up the project back in 2018 or 2019 when they did this, and so phase one they said was around that 150 mark, and then phase two he had at 240, and he upped that to 260 based on that bid from 2019. So oddly, it wasn't too much different from those 2 years, which is I had a question about, because inflation's been kind of high. So he had design bid or rough cost estimate back in 2019, and it was all too much. So phase one was, I guess, the way it worked. So I think a lot of it has to do with the infrastructure having to cross over from Francisco Lemus and coming back down. I think it's a longer run.
So
We lit about 30 trees last time to still get us at all.
I'm sorry, I don't hear very good, Ashley.
30 trees last time and 70 trees this time, so it
So
wasn't
we
quite
only
a
did
50.
30 trees in the first phase.
Yeah, sorry, it was 30, not 50.
Wow.
Well, I thought we just said there was
105 total. I
105
misspoke. It was
total,
30
okay.
that were lit and not 50.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more trees are getting lit. on this other phase.
So,
And the
I
bridge.
mean, and I privately supported this project, and I'm a big fan of it, I'm just trying to get my handle on this. So basically, our original estimates were way off.
I think when the ask came in to EIC, I don't know that they had fleshed all that out. I think when KCLC had come, it wasn't fully fleshed out at that time.
Because at my understanding, and my memory's not very good, but that original number was supposed to do the whole island, is that correct?
In someone's mind, I'm not sure it had run through a design engineer's, I don't think it'd run through the full engineering process at that point, but yeah. I believe so, was the hope.
That was my.
Also includes
that was my
going under the
recollection.
bridge too, I believe, correct? Into,
And so now, just to clarify, so you said we're gonna have to run new infrastructure across San Francisco Lima, so we can't tie into the existing infrastructure that we just installed?
No, I think the best practice is to go from two ends, right? And the most efficient use of it is to have power coming from both ends. That's the recommendation of the design engineers and staff from the engineering department.
So the original EIC grant was a $100,000 matching grant.
correct.
So, do we still have 45,000 unfunded under that original $100,000 grant?
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct. So there was the grant said that, EIC would contribute 100 once KCLC, was able to raise 100. And so, if I looked at that, it's kind of a split of both, I guess, left over, that KCLC and,
So the Christmas lighting group did raise 100,000, we funded 155, that covered it. There's still 45 that wasn't ever advanced under the original grant.
no. So the grant actually says that the KCLC funds, when the project is complete, if there's any leftover, it would go to EIC. But that also supposed a complete project, based on the project description at 105 trees and lighting the whole thing. So, both were funded, there's 45 in that leftover. But again, the original conception was that this would cover the entirety of the project, that $200,000, and it fell short.
So if there's 260 as the cost of phase two, and we're being asked for an additional 211,
I don't know that you're being asked for an additional 211, Charlie.
No, that was what I said, it'd be 210 roughly, some difference between the 50,000 and the 260.
Yeah. So my understanding was that the Christmas Lighting Corporation was gonna go back and fundraise, and the request was more for a matching grant. So if it's 260 is the estimate that was received, less out the $50,000 that's available, 45 in EIC's account or the city's account, 5,000 from Christmas Lighting Corporation. When George was here last time, I think he was discussing that he might come back with a matching grant, that EIC fund half and KCLC fund half. I don't want to, that's what he said last time. I know he didn't mention that he wanted EIC to fully fund the remainder $210,000.
That was my understanding last time we met, that would be the request.
So the request is for 210 or for half?
For
We don't
210.
know.
Well, we're looking for the board's direction on,
So this falls under the park, right? So can you speak to, or Charlie, if y'all can speak to what's the juice out of this squeeze? I mean, how's it gonna improve quality of life or provide, what benefit is it gonna provide to the community?
One will be an improvement there at the park that will give the community an additional arrow in its quiver to bring visitors in, but also for the for residents to enjoy also during the various holiday seasons.
So this is what we had envisioned as far as the plan, not only creating the lights on the trees, but also putting an environment there at that Tranquility Island to be able to do other events. Before, you didn't have any electrical power or grid down there that you could run anything off of it. Now I've noticed that the city and the parks, they've actually utilized that this past year to do the snow machine down there. So there's a lot of things that you can expand on that, not just the lighting of the trees itself, but utilizing that space as a whole.
Ashley, will you give some comment to this?
Sure. As far as no, I'll just reiterate what Charlie said. It's the original plan was to light the entire island, right? And so the first phase lit about a third of it. And so what you see is what you get right now. If we want to finish out the project, the rest of the island would be lit. It'd be a greater, more enhanced project. It'd be a greater experience. Just having all the lights up, additional infrastructure in the ground, so we can do more ornaments, things like that of that nature.
So will this next phase provide any additional infrastructure for other events and electrical capacity on the island, or is it just more lights and trees?
Yes, it's for both. It's for lights and trees and to expand the ground pedestals further along the island so we can enhance the length of the opportunity there.
And what additional activities or functions do you anticipate being able to have on the island if you have all of the infrastructure built in versus what you have now?
Definitely holiday decor. So we did 3 large ornaments this year. I don't know if y'all were able to see it, but we did a large arch. We're looking to do one at the opposite end too. And then we bought a couple of large ball decor ornaments. And so we'd be adding to that as far as holiday lighting. We did utilize infrastructure this year for, as mentioned, the snow events on the island. In addition to the women's chamber lighting that was there as well. We utilized the new lighting for that, electrical for that. We also utilized it for our 5K run we did in December. And it opens up the opportunity for any other events, any private rentals or community events that want to host events in the park. That's another opportunity for that as well.
Okay.
So that's gonna be like the pavilion, you can rent the islands?
Mm-hmm. It's already set up that way in the fee schedule where you can rent the island already, and now there's an additional fee. If you would like power, you can rent the island for that purpose.
So you could do a wedding reception?
Exactly, wedding reception, any other sort of events, baby showers, whatever.
Put a tent up on it and that sort of thing if you wanted to.
Correct.
So Charlie, does y'all's group have any vision of having something similar to like Marble Falls where, I mean, you've got a pretty significant Christmas display, or is?
I think our charge was primarily to get the infrastructure in place and then probably up to the city it's a city project. It's not a Christmas Light Corporation project per se.
Okay.
Also, we've just gotten word from George that he's said that we could negotiate too on the funding situation.
Tell him we appreciate that.
All of our communications, and this was fairly quick, right? This started kind of last week as part of my discussions with George, but it was all never a full ask for the remainder. It was to see if EIC would be amenable to splitting that remaining cost so they could go out and fundraise, same as last time.
Well, to that point, I guess I was interested, maybe this is more of a George question, but during the initial private fundraising efforts, I would assume, like us, they were thinking that was going to take care of the whole island. I'm curious if it would be more difficult coming back for a round 2
That
to
is one of the
complete the
concerns that
project, and if
we
that-
do have, because at that time, we were under the impression that would take care of everything, and that was the way that project was sold.
Yeah. Speaking for myself, maybe, I assume for the rest of the board as well, but liked the concept of doing a matching grant and kind of public-private partnership on this. So personally, I would love to see that type of structure continue, provided that the Lighting Corporation's board felt like there would be continued support from private sector and fundraising and that they hadn't kind of tapped all the potential donors already.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that we did discuss, is that there was some concern about going back to basically, we'd be going back to the same donors.
Generally speaking, I think the EIC likes to be last money in on a project. And
You could be the last of it in.
You got that
well,
opportunity right
and
now.
to me, part of the gauge of, you know, what's the community's additional desire for having the full island lit versus a part of it is whether or not people are willing to get out their checkbooks. So I would see a couple of options that we can consider. One is to wish you guys well and send you on your way to see what kind of funds you can raise and come back and let us know. And we can talk about it some more, or we could, you know, make some kind of commitment today contingent upon raising, you know, kind of matching funds along the lines that Greg talked about. But I'm sure there are other options, but
I mean, I don't think there's any question that it's a viable and important thing to do. It's more a matter of what's the best way to pay for it. And we've already obviously contributed to the project and so saw value in it from the beginning. And the tip of the hat to the folks that, like y'all, that are out there spearheading this kind of stuff. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
And
we
it's
are
a lot of-
all volunteer labor doing this.
Yeah, all volunteer. Trust me, I know. You know, I know. I've
The other
been,
thing is the time is a factor too. If we want to try to get this done prior to the next Christmas season, we're gonna have to move pretty rapidly on it.
that's fair.
So is my math right that if this project gets fully funded, we've got $410,000 in lights in those trees?
Yes, sir.
And
plugs.
infrastructure for not only lights,
And
but
plugs.
In plugs, lights and plugs.
Yeah.
Well, part of the vision for the river trail all along has been to have events down there and things that would take advantage of that. So, you know, I think this all just plays off of that vision. I think
My
it's,
personal feeling is, and I wrote a personal check, I'm a supporter, I voted for EIC, and I'll continue to do that. I would like for y'all to come back with a little bit more defined plan. Go to your board and say, we think we can raise X, and we need help with the rest of it. This is a little, I'm not inclined just to write a check for it, at this point. And some of that's past history. It's a little more substantial than what we were originally. 100%.
I do think, though, given the challenges of kind of going back to a similar donor base, asking for more support or finding new donors, I think if we were to consider doing a matching grant, that would be helpful to your efforts to raise funds. So, you know, rather than trying to go out and raise funds without the existence of a matching grant, if you could maybe figure out what your goal would be to raise and come back to us, and maybe we can make a commitment that would help make that fundraising process a little easier, knowing that those donations would be matched.
And I don't discount the fact that it's gonna be more difficult or as difficult, but I'd be happy to contribute again. I mean, I believe in it, I think it's, so I would be hopeful that some of the other major donor, I wasn't a major donor, but some of the other donors would at least see the value in it. And I think there's other people out there if you approach them.
very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Charlie, do you want to introduce your other board member?
Sergio Marquez Lopez.
Welcome.
all right, I believe that concludes item 6 on the agenda. So now we will move into executive session. And it's okay, we'll ask everybody to have cookies and punch on Michael in the lobby, and we will let you know when we're done.
Absolutely. That's on Charlie McIlvain, though. I said Charlie on my bill.
We need a motion and a
Yeah,
and a
So
second,
moved.
and,
Do I need to
Okay.
say the numbers?
yes.
I'd like to go and move that we go into executive session Um,
I think it's under 551.071 and 087.
okay, 551.071 and 551.087.
You can also use, sorry, let me just add in 0.073 as well.
And
Want to make sure we get them all.
all three of those.
We got a motion, we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? We are in executive session at 4:59. Out of executive session, and we have a motion that Mike's going to give us some guidance on.
This is the motion that staff is recommending that you all approve. Motion authorizing the execution of an LOI for the Mount Saddle project in accordance with the discussion conducted in closed session.
Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Motion, second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. All right, anything else? If not, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned.